2016, Module 8, Part 5. In this segment, we will be combining the IFERROR function with a VLOOKUP and an HLOOKUP. Now, if you're ever asked to do this, the one thing you should be aware of is that you will never get an error message with a true type of a VLOOKUP or an approximate. So you would never have to do this on a VLOOKUP that has an approximate match or a true or blank in that lookup type. And the reason for that is because it's always going to try to find the closest match and bring back an answer. Now, the false type that says it must be an exact match, if it cannot find the value that you have typed in that cell, then it will return an error message. And sometimes we would like to change what the error message says to display something different. Now, in this case, we're actually going to change the error message to read something other than a quote error, because we have a value in our data that is not a part of our table. And so we're giving it the text to include if that value comes up. Now, personally, I would have simply added that value to my table. And then that way, the error messages would truly be reserved if someone made a typing error when they were putting in the data. But let's go ahead and take a look at the example provided. Excuse me. All right, if we scroll down, you're going to come across $NA. What that means is this value, product category of all, does not exist in your two tables. So we have a table over here for suppliers. There is no product category of all. We also have an H lookup using this horizontal table. Again, no product category of all. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in a message that would change that value. But the reason I brought up that I probably wouldn't have done it that way is, what if someone typed in yarns crafting? We get that same error message. And what we're about to do is we're going to change the word that appears. Instead of being $NA, it's going to say various. So instead of alerting us that this was an error message, it would change the answer and it would give us various, instead of telling us that, wait a minute, you have a typing error here. Okay? So I like to be able to compare what we started with and what we ended up with after the if error. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy these two columns. Actually, I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to call this one supplier name with if error. Then we're going to call this one specialty store with if error. And I'm going to take these first two columns and I'm going to copy them and paste them over to here. Okay, it didn't let me do it, so we'll try again. Copy and paste. Notice it does fill in the whole column. Copy and paste. Now the reason I did this is two reasons. Number one, I want you to be able to go back and compare the VLOOKUP without the if error and the VLOOKUP with. You can then compare the results and see how it changes. Find that one. Our record here, the message that it receives. The other reason that I copied them is because you do not want to start the if error part of your equation until you have a working formula. So you want to make sure that your VLOOKUP works before you try to add the if error to it. The same way with your HLOOKUP. You want to make sure that is working first. If you use the IFERROR function with any other formula, the same rule applies. You want to use a working function first. Now the if error has two components. An expression, which is going to be your working function. Then a comma separates the next parameter, and that's the value if error. That's going to be your error message. So the very first step to working with any if error problem is to get a working function. So now we have our VLOOKUP working. You're going to want to go up into the formula bar. You want to click after the equal sign, but before the V. Type the word if error and open a parentheses. Now notice it tells me this is the value, that's the expression. All right, that's done. The value is my VLOOKUP. That's already working. So I'm going to go all the way to the end of it outside the closing parenthesis. Then I'm going to add a comma so that I can go to the next parameter. Notice now it says value if error. Tell me what you want me to put if it's not the error message. Notice also I'm doing this on row 2 and I'm going to let it copy down the entire table. You do not want to search for the errors and only put this in when there's an error. You put it on all of the rows and you let it determine if there is an error or not. So if there is an error, we are going to type the word various. Since that is text, it must be in quotes. So we're going to type various, close the quotes. Then we have to close the parenthesis that we added after if error. And then hit enter. Now if we scroll down, you can see it changed £NA to read various. Now let's see how we do that with our HLOOKUP. Again, you're going to do it in row 2, the first row of the formula. You're going to let that copy all the way down. So I'm going to come in between the equals and the H. Click there on the formula bar, and I am going to type if error open parentheses. The value is my formula. It is working. I don't want to change that, so I go all the way to the end, past the closing parenthesis, type a comma. Then I put the error message. If it is text, it needs to be in quotes. So I am going to put quote, various, quote, and close my parenthesis. Hit enter. And you can see here, must have already went past it. Where did it go? There it is. Now they are both changed to read various. The key to working with the if-error function is to make sure that your formula is working first. I took a working formula, a VLOOKUP, and then I added the if-error around it. Don't try to do it all in one step. You want to make sure the VLOOKUP or whatever function it is you're working with, you want to make sure that formula or function is working prior to trying to do the if-error. Let's go ahead and save our work. And we're beginning to look at some of the additional conditional formatting and then the last few functions that we have to work with.